I helped bullied and possessed Mia take revenge, uncovered Chloe's parents' murder plot, witnessed Lucas and Evan bicker in hospital, faced Elias's theft threat, and dreamed of an eerie white shadow pointing to Evan after exposing evidence. Even though I can't see it, I can feel Evan's aura subtly shifting, his cold, bitter energy gradually softening. I looked up, and just as he gently raised his hand, the dark resentment that had been clinging to Chloe began to dissipate. Chloe was still murmuring softly, "Can my wish come true? Can it? Can it?" "It can," Evan said in a deep, firm voice, a tone calm yet imbued with an unquestionable strength. Chloe shuddered all over, suddenly lifting her head to stare at him. I followed her gaze. At this moment, Evan seemed enveloped in a gentle glow, his expression softer and more serene than I'd ever seen before. "Your wish is perfectly reasonable. Your hands are clean. You deserve a future. Don't let hatred destroy it." "A future? Do I even still have a future?" Her voice was like paper soaked in water, soft and limp, carrying a desperate hopelessness that seemed ready to shatter at the slightest touch. Tears spilled down her cheeks like beads whose strings had snapped, hitting the lapel of her shirt and spreading into a small, dark wet stain. It was only then that I realized the body I was inhabiting belonged to Mia. The light in her eyes had completely gone out, leaving behind nothing but a dull, glazed-over gaze, a look of utter blankness and agony, the kind that comes from having one's hope ground to dust by relentless bullying. Seeing it made my chest tighten with an ache so profound that I could hardly breathe. They cornered me in the bathroom and doused me with cold water. They covered the back of my door with notes filled with insults. They even snatched away the pocket money I'd been saving up for months. I tried telling the teacher, but they accused me of lying. I tried talking to my parents, but they were too busy to even bother thinking about it. She choked on her words, each sentence punctuated by a sniffle. "They've driven me to the point where I don't want to live anymore. How could there possibly be any future left for me now after all this?" Evan responded firmly once again. "There will be. Right now, what you need to do is keep your emotions steady. Don't fall into the realm of the evil spirits. We'll be here to help you." "Why would you guys even want to help me?" Mia's voice was laced with suspicion, sounding like a wounded little animal. Before, people said they'd help me too, but as soon as they turned their backs, they went straight to Chloe and told her everything I'd said, leaving me beaten even worse. I just can't trust anyone anymore. I glanced at Evan, momentarily at a loss for how to explain. After all, I couldn't exactly tell him that it was precisely because I'd been haunted by her negative emotions that I'd felt compelled to help her, could I? Yet, that was indeed the truth. Her despair, her fear, the agonizing sense of isolation and helplessness, all of it had seeped right into me through those very same negative emotions that kept clinging to me, vividly and unmistakably. It was as if I'd personally experienced every single instance of bullying myself. Their grip on my heart felt so tight, squeezing it until it ached unbearably. Unexpectedly, Evan was the first to speak, his lips curling into a faint smile. "You've got to believe there are always more good people in this world than bad ones." Mia remained dazed, yet the bitterness she'd been carrying seemed noticeably eased. I breathed a sigh of relief too. That suffocating feeling had finally lifted. Evan turned to her and asked, "When this is all over, do you want to return to your own body, or do you have other plans?" Hearing those words, Mia's gaze finally focused. Her voice was as soft as a frail kitten's, yet it carried an unshakable resolve. "I'm going back. I still have my mom and dad, they're all I've got left, and I can't let them outlive me." "All right," Evan nodded. "But I heard Chloe's parents say they're planning to hurt my parents. Please, I'm begging you, save them. I'm begging you." Mia's voice was choked with sobs, wrenching at one's heart. "Don't worry," Evan said, his hand hovering above her head. "Just get some good sleep now. When you wake up, everything will be fine." Mia seemed to have been drained of all her strength. She slowly closed her eyes, and a single tear slid down the corner of her eyelid. I stared at Evan, momentarily lost in thought. Just moments ago, he'd been so gentle, like an older brother whose warmth could soothe even the most troubled soul. "Why are you staring at me like that?" Evan reached out and gave my forehead a light tap with his finger. Startled, I snapped back to reality and muttered under my breath, I didn't expect you to know how to comfort someone. Evan let out a snort of laughter. You think I'm doing all this for anyone but you? It's because of you, your little burden. I didn't dare argue back, so I quickly nodded and bowed slightly. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I really am your little burden. Hey, what's wrong with being a dead weight? At least he's willing to stick by me and help me out, this kind of dead weight? I'm perfectly happy to play that role. Evan nodded approvingly, looking quite pleased with himself. Yet fate always seems to be full of coincidences. Just as we were walking down the hospital corridor, we ran right into Lucas. We'd parted ways only last night, and now here we were, meeting again so soon. My heart leapt into my throat in an instant. I was terrified he'd blurt out fiancé right in front of Evan, because if he did, both of us would be in deep trouble. What are you doing hiding behind me? Evan suddenly stopped dead in his tracks. If it hadn't been for Evan standing right there beside me, I never would have thought of ducking away from my savior. But the situation was way too sensitive now. My relationship with Evan was already delicate enough as it was. If he found out about the family pact Lucas had mentioned, he'd surely assume I deliberately kept it from him. And once he lost his temper, the consequences could be disastrous. Walking behind you just feels safer, somehow I mumbled, making up some random excuse and quickly changing the subject. Where are we headed now? Deep down, I was silently praying, Lucas, please don't see me, please don't see me. But the more I tried to avoid it, the more likely it seemed that he'd show up exactly when I least expected him. Just then, Lucas started walking toward us. Evan immediately yanked me out from behind him, his brow furrowed. You don't feel safe walking by my side? Lila, if you say something like that, it's going to be really hard for me to help you out. As soon as he pulled me, my footing went wobbly, and I took several steps backward, nearly losing my balance and about to fall. Suddenly, a strong arm wrapped around my waist, and with a gentle tug, I found myself pressed against a warm embrace filled with the rich scent of oranges, a stark contrast to Evan's cool, crisp aura. We're meeting again, could this be fate? Lucas's familiar voice came from above my head. I stiffly looked up and met his smiling gaze, while Evan's eyes behind me felt like thorns pricking my back. As such a coincidence, I forced out a strained smile, quickly pulling away from his embrace and darting to stand beside Evan. The smile in Lucas's eyes softened slightly, yet he still maintained that calm, refined demeanor. His gaze swept over Evan like a searchlight, and he spoke slowly, almost leisurely. So you're Lila's boyfriend, huh? I've heard older men are better at being tender, but now that I see you, oh sorry, I can't seem to detect a single hint of tenderness in you. Instead, you just seem to treat her like a hot potato. I was utterly dumbfounded. What on earth was Lucas doing? Was this some kind of public, humiliating taunt? Had he hit his head when he'd rescued me last night? Saying something like that right in front of Evan, is it any different from handing him a knife and telling him to cut himself? I quickly made eye contact with Lucas, my eyes almost twitching from blinking so fast, but he acted as if he were blind, turning his head toward me and giving me a smile that said, "Don't worry, I've got this." Then he went on to add another jab, "Lila, if this old guy ever starts bullying you again, just remember to let me know. I don't usually fight seniors, but for you, I'd make an exception. After all, a dinosaur who bullies little girls doesn't really count as a real senior." I raised my hand to cover my face, unable to bear looking straight at him. Oh no, this is totally over now. Do these two guys plan to stage some kind of elementary school level verbal showdown gone wild right here in the hospital hallway? Should I just find a safe spot to hide first, before I get dragged into it? Evan wore a sinister grin on his face, a grin that sent shivers down my spine. The next second, he suddenly reached out and pulled me tightly into his arms, his arm locking around my waist like an iron, causing me to wince in pain. Although Uncle's older, he's got plenty of experience in every aspect, especially when it comes to being tender, he said, lowering his head to press a light kiss on my forehead. His voice was laced with possessiveness that almost overflowed, and he even deliberately raised an eyebrow at Lucas. Unlike some young upstarts who just know how to show off with their big talk, but are utterly useless in practice. Hi, what kind of elementary school rivalry is this? Evan, can you act like a grown-up for once? And besides, Is it really okay to casually brag about having plenty of experience being tender? We'd better get going. We've got important things to take care of, Evan whispered softly into my ear, his voice low enough only we could hear. That remark sent goosebumps racing down my arms, and I let him lead me along like a log, completely motionless. Oh, by the way, thanks for saving her last night. Evan turned around, his tone dripping with polite formality as if wrapped in ice. I'll treat you to dinner sometime. Let's go to that fast food joint on the corner that offers a buy one get one free kids meal. It should be perfect for you. Lucas's face instantly turned dark as if splashed with ink. His eyes grew so cold they seemed capable of freezing anything, but he didn't say another word. Clearly, the kids' meal had hit a nerve, and he was afraid that pushing the issue any further would only land him in an even more humiliating situation at Evan's hands. So I just turned around and mouthed an apology to him. He paused briefly, then gave me a slight nod. Once we were out of the hospital, Evan suddenly yanked his hand away from mine, crossed his arms over his chest, and gave me a sidelong glance. Why did he call me uncle? What did you tell him? Honest to God, I didn't say a thing. I quickly shook my head. I just met him last night. How could I possibly have mentioned you to him? I'm not stupid. Good for you, Evan snorted coldly, then looked up toward the northwest. Time to get down to business. Come on, you chicken. Just moments ago, he'd been calling me ow ow, now he'd reverted right back to chicken. Men really can change their tune in a heartbeat. I followed silently behind him. Suddenly, a bird landed on his shoulder, chirped excitedly for a moment, then flew away. Evan stopped and turned around to say to me, Chloe's parents kidnapped Mia's parents, threatened them to withdraw the lawsuit, and even tried to destroy the evidence of the bullying. Was it that bird just now who told you all this? I asked in astonishment. Yeah, Evan nodded. Mia wants Chloe to be utterly disgraced and despised by everyone. Those pieces of evidence have to come out. With today's advanced social media, as soon as we post them, they'll spread across the entire internet in no time. That's the quickest way to calm her resentment. I couldn't help but exclaim, Evan, you're really keeping up with the times. Evan gave me a look as if I'd just said something utterly ridiculous. You think I'm someone who'd get left behind by the times? I didn't dare say it. I really did used to think that way, after all. He always loved wearing a red silk robe, looking just like a bridegroom who's holding a wedding every single day. But today he's wearing a black jacket, which actually fits right in with the modern times. Come here, hold me tight, Evan said suddenly. My cheeks flushed with a blush of shyness, but I still hurried forward and wrapped my arms tightly around his waist. No sooner had I settled into his embrace than Evan lifted us off the ground, and all I could hear was the whistling of the wind rushing past my ears. We've got to get our hands on that evidence before they destroy it, Evan's voice carried through the wind. Though I couldn't quite make out what he was saying, nestled in his arms, I felt utterly at ease. Evan moved so swiftly that soon we arrived at our destination. Surprisingly, it was the same abandoned building where I'd run into Elias last night. Last night, that's exactly where I ran into Elias. I blurted out quickly. I have no idea how he managed to drive the bus all the way here, and he even tried to eat me. Luckily, Lucas came to my rescue. Evan shot me a cold glance. One look was enough to shut me up fine. If he doesn't want to talk about him, then I won't. Seeing that I turned into a startled quail, Evan finally spoke. You're talking about Elias, not Silas, right? I told him that Silas and Elias were twins, and Evan's brow furrowed so deeply it could have crushed a fly. Something's off, he said suddenly. What's off? I pressed him, but he didn't answer. Instead, he headed straight for the abandoned building, leaving behind only these words, you just wait outside. I had no choice but to stop. Night had already fallen, and in the darkness, it seemed as though a pair of eyes were staring straight at me, making my skin crawl all over. Lila. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from behind me. I reflexively turned around, and there stood a tall figure, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. After taking off his gold-rimmed glasses, he revealed a pair of gentle eyes. It was Silas himself. Wait a minute. How could he be here at this late hour? This must be Elias in disguise. He pulled this trick on me last time, and this time, I'm absolutely not falling for it. It's me, he said with a smile, nodding slowly as he took a step closer toward me. Stop right there. Don't you dare come any closer. I shouted sharply. You're not Silas, you're Elias. Don't think that just because you're pretending to be him, I won't recognize you. Stop, he said, his smile unchanged. I really am Silas. I'm warm and real. Want to give it a touch? I stared at him, utterly baffled. In this tense atmosphere, he's actually asking me to touch him? Don't think you can fool me. I took a cautious step back, my guard up. Silas told me that Elias can take on a physical form at night, so it's not surprising he'd have warmth too. I'm not falling for your tricks again. Silas gave a resigned chuckle and took off his glasses, rubbing his temples. Guess the same old trick just doesn't work twice, huh? But tonight, I'm not planning to lay a hand on you, not when I'd rather pull you closer to me than eat you alive. He took another step forward, his gaze now sinister and calculating. After all, everything he cares about, that's exactly what I want. My face was blank with disbelief. Was this guy seriously unhinged? Did he really think he could snatch me away from Evan? Could there be some grudge between him and Evan? I cursed under my breath, then turned around and sprinted into the unfinished building. Although Evan had told me to wait outside, Elias, a dangerous character, was lurking out there. It was far safer to slip inside and find Evan. The deeper I went into the building, the more peculiar it seemed. Why on earth had Chloe's parents chosen to tie Mia's parents up right here? Could it have something to do with Elias? I crept cautiously through the pitch-dark hallway, terrified that Elias might suddenly leap out at me. Just as I passed a window, two figures suddenly tumbled down from upstairs, making a muffled thud. Immediately afterward, Evan's figure appeared outside the window, hovering midair and staring straight at me. My voice trembled with fear. Evan, did you kill someone? Why are you so surprised? Even if they're killed, what's the big deal? Evan floated in and landed beside me, his tone brimming with arrogance. Your human laws can't touch me. His words left me speechless. Then who is that guy who fell down there? I asked again. Evan sneered. Two fugitives wanted for murder. Chloe's parents hired them to kidnap Mia's parents. I thought they'd be tough guys, but all it took was a little scare, and off they went. Just wimps, really. I let out a sigh of relief. So they were fugitives, huh? They deserved it. What about Mia's parents? What about the evidence? I pressed urgently. Evan tossed me an old smartphone. The evidence is right here, ready to be made public at any time. As for Mia's parents, they're fine except for a bit of emotional turmoil. I erased their memories of this whole ordeal and had Hugo take them home. Who would have thought Evan was so thoughtful? And why for him just grew a little more. Evan has already cracked the password on the phone inside. There are countless photos and videos of Mia being bullied, along with utterly disgusting chat logs, all filled with Chloe and her accomplices hurling insults and humiliating Mia. In many of the videos, I've relived scenes from my own nightmares, Mia being held down while Chloe burns her chest with a cigarette, but Chloe smashing to death the stray dog Mia had been feeding right in front of her eyes, forcing Mia to watch helplessly. And the whole thing started simply because Mia had gently reminded Chloe to speak more quietly during self-study. That's all it took. My fists clenched tighter and tighter, seething with rage. How could these people be so vicious? Don't underestimate the evil of minors, Evan's voice sounded beside me. Suddenly, I found myself grateful that my own middle school years had been relatively smooth, but not everyone was so lucky. We can't just post these videos as they are. We've got to blur out Mia's face and any private body parts, otherwise, we'll cause her even more harm, I said seriously. Evan nodded slowly, a hint of admiration flashing in his eyes. Not bad for being careful. Once we've got the evidence, all it'll take is exposure, and Chloe's image as the campus goddess will completely crumble. She deserves it. When she was doing all those nasty things, did she ever stop to think about how much pain and damage she'd inflict on others? By the way, Evan, there's something I need to tell you. I suddenly remembered Elias's words. Elias says he's going to snatch away everything that's yours, anything that belongs to you. He wants it. Evan's expression turned strange, and his gaze upon me was as if he were looking at a complete idiot. There seemed to be a huge question mark floating above his head. He's trying to snatch my stuff? I hesitated before nodding slowly. Although he didn't say it outright, I think he was definitely referring to you. After all, right now I was standing right next to Evan, his most special presence. But Evan just gave me a meaningful smile, said nothing more, and then turned around, saying, "Let's go." With that, he pulled me into his arms in one swift motion and led me away from the unfinished building. Back at Return Manor, we happened to run into Hugo, who was just coming in from outside. He nodded briefly at Evan and said, "The job's done. No problems whatsoever." Well done," Evan replied. Evan said, "I'm rewarding you with lobster bisque for the next 2 weeks." With that, he strode straight into the house, leaving Hugo and me standing in the yard, staring at each other in silence. Hugo's lips twitched slightly, and he gritted his teeth as he muttered, "What a wonderful reward. How is it wonderful?" I asked curiously. Hugo's lobster bisque was so delicious that it was making my mouth water. "It's wonderful precisely because he's a suddenly." Even the usually composed Hugo burst into a string of profanities, leaving me utterly speechless. I never would have guessed that Hugo, who always seemed like such a mild-mannered young guy, could swear so vividly and down to earth. "Hugo," I whispered softly, "aren't you worried Evan will come after you for swearing like that?" Hugo let out a cold snort, his tail drooping limply to the ground, then turned around and headed back into the house. This isn't the first time it's happened. We're used to it. Only I was left in the courtyard. The evening breeze was slightly cool. I took out that old phone and carefully blurred Mia's face and private parts in the video. There was no way I'd let her suffer a second round of harm. I edited a lengthy post detailing Chloe's bullying behavior, then posted the photos and videos together on social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram. I even bought extra data and tagged the posts with hashtags such as #ChloeCloudCityQueen and #ZeroTolerance for school bullying. Only after finishing all this did I finally breathe a sigh of relief, but at the same time, I couldn't help feeling a bit scared and uneasy. Was exposing Chloe like this really a violation of her privacy? After hesitating for a while, I simply tossed my phone aside. Back when she bullied Mia, she never once thought about privacy or dignity. Now, she's just reaping what she's sown. It's already very late. After I finished washing up, I stood hesitantly in front of Evan's door, wondering whether to go in or not. Just as I was torn between two minds, the door suddenly swung open. Evan leaned against the doorframe, calling out impatiently, "Aren't you coming in yet? Do I have to invite you?" I quickly shuffled into the room, sitting awkwardly on the intricately carved bed, my hands nervously fidgeting with the hem of my clothes. Evan was wearing a black silk robe and lounged comfortably against the headboard, reading a book. He seemed completely unaware of my presence. I carefully slipped onto the inner side of the bed, and just as I'd pulled the covers over myself, an arm suddenly reached out, pulling me close and pressing me tightly against his chest. "Evan, what are you doing?" I couldn't help but ask. Evan didn't even look up from his book. I've got this habit when I'm reading, I always need to hold on to something. "But I've seen you read before without holding anything at all," I pointed out. I retorted, puzzled. Evan frowned and said, "Shut up." Reluctantly, I obeyed and nestled quietly in his arms. His cool, aloof aura always made me feel at ease. Soon enough, drowsiness washed over me, and I drifted off into a deep sleep. That night, I had a bizarre dream. The dream had no setting whatsoever, just an endless expanse of white mist. Amidst the mist floated tiny, dark red glowing specks, resembling solidified drops of blood. Right in the center of the mist loomed a faint, white figure whose face I couldn't make out. Yet somehow I felt as though it was staring straight at me, with a sadness that was both familiar and alien. Then a voice so indifferent yet utterly desperate, resonated through the mist, piercing straight into my eardrums with a bone-chilling coldness. "I never want to have another life again."